Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Just a quick video today. I'm going to do an update on the indoor Phalaenopsis. We have a problem here, which I found out yesterday. My idea of cleaning the roof off and cleaning the gutters out and cleaning the barrel out is all very well, but directly above here is the guttering on the house. And there's things growing out of it. It's full of muck, and the magpies get up there looking for grubs and worms and things because it's so full up with rubbish, and they keep throwing the moss down. So I'm not going to be able to keep it clean, so we might have to rethink that unless I can persuade the agent to pay for somebody to come and completely clean the gutters out round the house. The guttering on the house goes right across and round. So it's either all got to be clean or there's no point, quite honestly, because lumps of moss have got dirt and all sorts of muck in them, and if they get down on the roof the rain will wash down and go in the barrel, so it's not clean water basically, so I'm not happy with that. Right, now I did actually put a spot of feed in here because these poor old Phalaenopsis have been getting tap water lately because it was handy. Because they were on the kitchen windowsill next to the tap, so that's what they got. But we'll just see. I don't want to overcook the feed, but there again, they can take quite high levels of feed. And it needs to be quite a bit higher than 47, doesn't it? Right, I was going to say I put about 3 grains in, so we'll put a bit more in. Give them a reasonable feed this time. Let's put a pinch in, see what happens. Probably be far too much now. Just keep the lid on. That's an airtight container as long as the clamps are down. And obviously it's relatively moist in here, although the humidity's only 70. It's 70 at 15 degrees, so that would be classed as okay and fine. Not too high, and it's certainly not too low, not at that temperature. Still nowhere near enough. 105, we need to go up again, probably double that. I've got one wet hand and one dry hand. Well, that'll definitely be too much. But with Phalaenopsis, I'm not quite sure there is such a thing as too much, as long as it's not ridiculous. They will take high levels of feed. They've got no storage capability basically, so what you give them is all they get. They don't store it up. $160. Oh, that'll do. Actually, no, I want it higher than that. I really do want these to have feed. They haven't had anything for probably a month. That's probably why I've only got 1 spike instead of 2 or 3. So as far as these are concerned, I'll just let that sit for a minute. We can start looking at the plants, make sure it's dissolved and everything. We've got this little mini one, which isn't part of the project, but it got brought into the house. It has very attractive flowers. Sorry, I'm nowhere near the camera, I'm getting out of practice. It's a little mini phal. It's actually got a growth, so there's a second plant coming out, and it's got some new roots starting. It's not in a very good state, but it just needs temperatures really. If it gets temperatures it should start growing again, which is why I'm keeping these in the house. It's too cold for them out here. And then this one is the one where I cut the spike, hoping it might shoot out. It's had quite a long time and it hasn't shot out yet, so maybe it's not going to. But if it's going to, that eye will start to move. I personally don't think it will. There's no sign of any other spike, and quite honestly it will be highly unlikely for it to produce a new spike while the old one's still there. So we might have to just bite the bullet on that and take that spike off. In fact, I'll do it now. It's had a long time and it hasn't attempted to shoot out, so I think we'll we'll take it off. It's, a lot of people seem to fuss about taking spikes off. In the wild, they would branch if they were going to, and if not, the spike would just die back. So I'm just going to take it off. So that's that one, spike gone. Let's not get these in, whoops, not get these in a muddle, spill your coffee all over the place. Put my finger in the cup. Right, now, that's the one with the label. That's the one, let me put that one separate because there is a pair here. There is this one, which is effectively the mother plant, and there's no sign of a spike on here, no sign at all. And it might be that this is a summer bloomer and it missed a season last year, because I've had these a while now. So I think we'll start, it's grown leaves, it's a nice plant, you know, it's a good plant, strong healthy leaves, hydrated, it's got a good root system. So there's nothing wrong with this, apart from the fact it needs to be fed more often to build up some strength. If you remember what I said, and this is the other one. This was joined on. I think it was joined on, or it was in the pot anyway. I keep kicking the tripod, sorry. But this is the same type in the same pot. Again, it's got plenty of roots. It's a nice looking plant. You know, new leaves are a good size. They're all hydrated, but no sign of a spike. So the overall strength in a plant like this, when they're monopodial, determines whether it can actually produce a spike. The internal mechanisms of the plant will be saying, have I got enough strength for a spike? No, I need a new leaf then, and possibly some roots. We'll get that done first. And then it'll have a pause and think, am I strong enough to do a spike? No, we'll carry on growing the plant then. And if you don't keep that plant strong and healthy, it'll keep repeating that and you'll get vegetative growth and you won't get the spikes. So some say starve them, I say feed them. I say bump them up, get them full of food and vitality so that they have surplus energy, at which point the various mechanisms inside the plant will just basically say, right, now we can do a spike. And then it will think, actually it's the wrong time of year, so I won't. That'll mess you up, won't it? Alright, so that's those two, they're a pair, and then this was the odd one, and this one has a spike. It's not I won't say that's a very good spike, it's probably only going to have 3 or 4 blooms. That's not a strong spike. But then out of the plants, that's not the strongest plant, that's the weakest plant. It's only got 4 leaves. So that's not a strong plant. But nonetheless, it's pushed up a spike. So that comes into the winter flowering class, or autumn through winter. They start in early autumn. And they're so slow sometimes it's spring before they actually come out. But nonetheless, it's got some roots, it's okay, it's a happy plant. It's just not very strong because it's not very large yet. So those are they, and they live on the kitchen windowsill, which in this house is not as warm as the previous house. Kitchen doesn't get as warm. Right, so what are we looking at now? 230, that's a bit more like it. And I'm not going to bother measuring the pH. They're going to get what they're given this time round, because the pH meter takes a couple of minutes and I'd rather just get on with this. I don't want to prolong this video unnecessarily. Let's put my feed away. Keep things tidy now. Everything will eventually have its permanent place, and that's where it will live. Right, as far as watering is concerned, I'm not changing anything. All I'm doing is really being a little more careful not to splash over the sides, to try and keep the water in the bowl so that we don't get dribbles all over the floor. So that's the plan. I'm sure I shall get slapdash occasionally. But as I said, these at this time of year with the low light levels, there's not a lot to do with these really, apart from just make sure they don't stay dry for any length of time. I was just thinking actually, am I closer to the airport? Because I can definitely hear the, mind you, that could be the wind direction is just that way round, because I can definitely hear the commercial passenger jets taking off today. Not that there's many of them. I personally think that anybody venturing abroad at the moment is possibly pushing their luck. Some of the European countries are more hard line on the COVID restrictions than the UK, sorry, the England is being. Scotland, Ireland and Wales have set up a lot more restrictions than England has. We're being a bit laid back at the moment, which some agree with, some don't. At some point or another we've got to cut these restrictions out and just sort ourselves out and just say, well, let it run. You have got a theory, now this is only a theory, there is some science behind it, but they're keeping it quiet at the moment. A long time ago, when they didn't know what to do with this virus, when it was all shiny new and everybody was running around like headless chickens, there was a mention of herd immunity. In other words, there's enough people that have had the virus and developed antibodies against it internally, in other words they fought it off, that eventually there won't be anybody left to infect, or the numbers available to be infected drop right down, and the virus will effectively wipe itself out. There'll just be occasional flare-ups. Because if you think about it, if I go out and I meet 50 people and they're all incapable of being infected, and that's the only people I've met, I can't spread it, can I? And if I can't spread it, it dies out in me. And it may be that without mentioning it, that's what they've got in mind now, because although this is a real contagious variant and it's running like wildfire, it's not wiping the population out. So if you're going to let it run and start, you know, you've got your immunity from the jabs. There's some, I was going to say idiots, but there are some people who have chosen not to have the jabs. If you've got an incredibly good reason, then so be it, preferably medical. If your reason is purely because the government said you should, then you are basically one of those, because you're jeopardising other people. However, there are medical reasons, whatever, but that's the only one I'll accept. But once you get that, all the jabs done, and a lot of people have been catching up now, people that haven't had any jabs are starting to come and get their first one now, because it's becoming blatantly obvious that people are getting away with catching it, those that do still catch it that have been jabbed, and there are some. Jabs were never meant to be perfect. So some people that have had the jabs have still caught it. But it's like a cold, you know, and you're going to get one of them anyway, probably. So eventually the antibodies will exist in the population and the virus will lose its ability to spread like wildfire. And if we, as responsible adults, and the responsible adults that explain it to our kiddywinkles, just be careful out there, will help speed up that process. Right, so that's those done. Good soaking. And they'll now get watered a bit more frequently. They're under my nose on the kitchen windowsill. This kitchen's a bit smaller than the other one was, so everything's under your nose in there. I think if you stood in the middle you could touch all the surfaces. It's a bit smaller. But as such, I want to keep my eye on these now. I mean, we're probably about eight and, where are we in January? It's about 8¼ hour days at the moment. By the end of this month, it'll be about 9¼ and that's not quite enough to trigger anything. But by the end of February, we'll nearly be up to 11 hours again. And that's the trigger. That's when all of these things start waking up and thinking, actually, that's a normal day. I might start doing something again. So we've got that to look forward to, those 11-hour day trigger points when things will start to grow, things will start to move. Those that are not growing much will start growing better or faster. Those that have been virtually dormant will come into life. A lot of the winter resting type dendrobiums, you know, the sort of drier in winter type, they'll be waking up again and doing something. Some of them hopefully will be doing buds and blooming. So we've got a lot to think about, and it will come round quicker than you think, quite honestly. January is always, for me, it's a nothing month. We've done the Christmas, we've done the New Year, not that I ever do anything for New Year, it's just another day. Mind you, we have had a couple of years that we probably all want to forget, but I don't mean to say this one's going to be better. We hope it's going to be better. Maybe people can feel a bit more relaxed going for their walks in the countryside. I mean, I can remember a time, you know, when it really was bad, and you walk along the road. If somebody's coming towards you on your sidewalk or pavement, you cross the road to keep out of there. You know, if a jogger came along, you really cross the road, you know. That's all you want in your face, isn't it? So, yeah, I think we still need to be relatively cautious, and if you're going to go in the crowded spaces, then perhaps you ought to have your mask on. I mean, that's the only thing England has done, really, is they brought back mask wearing is compulsory in shops and, you know, busy places and things like that. Does that need to be compulsory? Is it not just common sense? You know. Anyway, enough about that, cobblers. Everybody's got their own opinions. Everybody will do their own thing. In some countries there's enforcement, and certainly in some of the European countries those enforcements are getting quite harsh. Lots more new rules and restrictions and stuff like that. Again, Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland have done their own thing. Very similar, all three of them, but harsher restrictions than currently in England. And Boris, old Blondie, he stood up and said that he's happy with the restrictions as they are at the moment, and they're monitoring it, you know, all the time, you know. And it is quite an important thing to keep your eye on, because it can change. And it's far more important than worrying about who paid for flipping what. When his flat was done up, really give a monkeys? Anyway, as I said, that was a sort of update on the indoor Phalaenopsis. Have we got any out here? We've only got one out here that actually stays out here because it seems to do okay, and that's the mounted one. That's my only other Phalaenopsis, and that does have a little spike that's progressing. It's pushing on quite nicely. Attractive little flowers on that, which is why I keep it. It's not the happiest looking plant. Some of the older leaves are starting to get a bit yellowed, but it has grown a new one recently, two new ones recently, that are larger than anything else on the plant. That's progress. But it is a mini phal, it's never going to be a monster. But lovely little flowers on that. That's why I sort of kept it really when I rationalised. Right, that'll do for today. As I say, I'm not doing any more watering today. Those got left out as I caught up in here. Everything that needs water out here has had it. The only thing that didn't get watered was Derek's plants. They've taken over that lower shelf down there that had the pinguiculars on, because the pinguiculars have now been dotted around. They're not happy at the moment, it's too cold for them. They need a bit more warmth. And now that I'm comfortable here, we're opening the door again. So during the day, with that door open, I get an extra 2 or 3 degrees out here, which it can make quite a difference. So, I wouldn't say I'm settled out here yet. I still keep looking at things and thinking, is that really the right place? Oh, I'll show you that as well. On my sad looking Mazda Valia, my worst Mazda Valia, is the one that's got the bloom on it. I wonder if that's desperation. I wonder if it thinks, crikey, if I don't bloom and get some seed, I'm going to die. Anyway, it's an attractive flower, just the one. And yeah, I mean, this one is starting to grow again. It has got some roots, and it's producing more roots at the base of some of the upper bits. So it's pulling on a bit. And maybe the conditions in here will be better for the Masdevallias. This is now on a top shelf along with the others, so they're definitely going to get more light. But I'm not, you know, I haven't got to worry about sunlight as such, just good light. There's nothing else new. I haven't spotted anything else doing the rounds. And there's still plants that I'm not right with. As I say, I've got my dendrobium shelf and another dendrobium shelf, and that caters for all of the potted dendrobiums. They're either on the top shelf there or they're on this lower one here, which is the Latorias, a bit less light for them. So the Phalaenopsis types, black hair types back from the glass, not quite as much light. The Phalaenopsis types, the Nobiles, my one and only antelope type, they're all up there. Latoria types down here, as I said, and then we've got an assortment. I've got all my Miltoniopsis together. That's no different to how they were, apart from the fact they've got a shelf to themselves. And then all the Cattleyas, holy clay pots, and those that went into the baskets are all on one shelf on the top. That stays as it is, no reason to change that. And then other shelves are a bit of a mixture, because often there isn't enough of a sort to warrant a whole shelf. Or it does, but there's one big one, so it has to go on a certain shelf to accommodate its height, and therefore it's too big a shelf to waste some, if you see what I mean. So yeah, I'm getting there. I had a fiddle around with some of the plants yesterday, and it's the same with the mounts. You know, as I water them, they may get put back in different positions. Because again, I would want the some of the dendrobium types up on the top row, the Cattleya types on the top row, Oncidium's next one down, Tolumnia's on the top row. You know, they need good light. Yeah, so I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. I'm getting there, and I've still got some plants on shelves that are lower down. And if I can find a way of getting them onto a higher shelf, I will, just to avoid bending down, you know, make life easy for myself. So anyway, see you next time. I suppose you could say this is the first normal video in the grow room. And yeah, it's Friday today. I don't know when this will get posted, but as you've seen, if I've got a backlog of videos, I always put filmed on such and such at the top of the description, so that you can see what day it was actually filmed. And eventually I will run out of those and I'll be filming for the day, if there's going to be one that day. Right, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.